I will read a statement on the consolidation of the European Union. I'm talking, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking to you from Poland on 22 of August 2024. As a sovereign national government of Poland, established pursuant to Article 4 of the Polish Constitution, in connection with the refusal to register individual candidates for the elections in October 15, 2023. We actively work to respect and enforce natural human rights, the Constitution and democracy in Poland. Every nation has the right to self-determination, and every person has the right to live in freedom and in a legal environment that gives him a chance for biological survival and secures him the opportunity to develop and pursue happiness. The state of affairs can only be guaranteed. This state of affairs can only be guaranteed by a democratically and honestly elected authority from among the people and the structures of a sovereign nation state subordinated to it. Poland has been ruled for decades by foreigners not democratically elected by the Polish nation. Contrary to the constitutional rights, during the election in October 15, 2023, over 99% of Poles de facto had no right to candidate nor to field their candidates. Therefore, we cannot objectively say that in Poland is a democracy and that the Polish nation has its own authorities, because this is not true. In fact, the Polish nation does not decide anything. Power was stolen from the Polish nation. The situation is similar in other European countries, especially those who re-emerged from communism in the 1990s. The project of the European Union as one country, the so-called United States of Europe, is in fact a denial of the sovereignty of states and nations, a denial of democracy, a denial of true competition and economic freedom, and a denial of dignity, freedom and identity of indigenous Europeans. European Union officials routinely violate fundamental human rights and the national constitution of a member states. Additionally, the creation of Eurocorps troops, which is in fact intended to be used to keep in check by means of military force entire European nations in a slave state, is a shameful betrayal of their nations and an attempt to forcefully subjugate entire European nations to a handful of unelected officials and those standing behind them, transnational corporations. Europe comes from Latin civilization, and only on its principles, maintaining its sovereign nation states, can it function, generating the development of its states and the development, prosperity and happiness of the European nations. Europe can only survive as a European community of sovereign nation states and not as one super federal state, currently implemented by Brussels, Paris, Berlin and transnational corporations. The European Union must be dissolved immediately because it leads to human destruction, violence, poverty, backwardness and mass murders, example, through forced vaccination, abortion, euthanasia, suicides due to the lack of the prospects for human biological survival and development, etc. Instead of the current European Union, it is proposed a European agreement of sovereign nation states with its own separate legal systems, its own armies and control from the level of nation states is proposed. The European Alliance of Sovereign Nation States will be a discussion body which, in case of threat or war, will aim to provide common voluntary defense against a potential invader, but with a prohibition on placing any foreign troops on the territory of any European state unless that state is at war with another country and will need and want military support. Europe, which is currently at a critical moment in its history, has two alternatives before it. The first is to function at the service of globalists as a totalitarian supranational communist regime if the currently implementation project of the EU as a federal state is completed. The second alternative is to hand over Europe to the free nations of Europe and function as a solidary community of sovereign European nation states, guaranteeing each European state its own separate legal system in each country and its own state army. It should be also mentioned that the result of ongoing globalization, entire countries and nations have become indebted, but they cannot be held responsible for these debts, because these debts were incurred against the knowledge and will of entire states and nations, deprived in reality of power and their national banks, because power was exercised by a group of people from behind the scenes, using electoral fraud in the form of alleged democracy. Accordingly, all European nations, having taken over control of their country from the state level, have every right to recognize all their public debts as non-existent and refuse to repay them. Due to the threat of war on the territory of Poland as a result of the predatory economic policy and greed of the foreigners managing Poland, in connection with attempts to cause the collapse of the Polish state as a result of bankruptcy, and as a result of irresponsible and treasonous decisions and actions of the authorities in Warsaw, the sovereign national government of Poland, in order to maintain the state sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Polish state, declares Poland a neutral state. We call on all countries in the world to recognize our neutrality. In the event of actions and decisions of the current non-democratic authorities in Warsaw that are not aimed at preserving peace and are not aimed to not engaging in wars, we call on all provincial assemblies, all district councils and all municipalities in Poland to recognize our sovereign national government as the government temporarily and to terminate obedience to the authorities in Warsaw under the rights of our Polish Constitution, especially Articles 4, 8, 82, 85.1. Under the Cichocki Decree of April 2, 2015, and under the International Law of Nations to Self-Determination. The Polish nation has proven for many generations through the life and sacrifice of our ancestors that it wants to maintain its own sovereign national Polish state and is ready to fight for it to the last drop of blood. The treasonous authorities in Warsaw that is dragging us into war in order to deliberately deprive us of our sovereign Polish national state. The authorities that is pushing us into a European totalitarian slave communist creation in the form of a federal European state. And finally, the authorities that gives consent to mass settlement on the territory of Poland for foreign nations from Ukraine and Israel, and then to separate territorial autonomy from the territory of Poland for those foreign groups, has no legitimacy or any right, including moral right, to exercise power over the Polish nation or to make decisions on behalf of the Polish state and Polish nation. I call on the Polish army to, by virtue of its oath, stand on the side of the Polish nation and the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Polish state. It was announced by Teresa Garland, sworn-in electoral president of the Republic of Poland, a chief of the sovereign national government of Poland, on August 2024. Thank you.